I don't like to make these simplistic sort of divisions, but let's just say like there is an educated kind of anywhere cosmopolitan elite, and they find these kinds of ideas appalling, and they ridicule them. But not only do they ridicule them, they also ridicule the people who espouse them. And that creates this kind of bitterness that's, to me, totally understandable from people who love the country and they love the West, and they don't understand why they're being ridiculed just for having pride in their own culture. Right? It's such a baffling thing that you would ridicule a person for expressing pride in his or her own culture.
This is going to be the political dividing line that's moving through both of the parties. Can you be, should you be proud to be an American, and all that it stands? And for all that it stands, that is the dividing line that's making its way through. And right now it's making its way through suburban white housewives who are coming to terms with the fact that the schools have been taken over by 1619 CRT folks that are teaching little Sally that she's a racist and an oppressor and that American history is shameful. And then they come home and they tell their parents that, and their parents are like, what the hell? That's not true. And so that line is slicing through the dinner table.
Right, and I think just I'm going to get political. Well, we've been political, but I'm not going to explicitly political here with the CRT stuff. I don't care what we call it. It is absolutely true that the educational system in the United States teaches that the United States has just this wicked history of racism, and which some of that is true, but like there's a difference between teaching that that was a failure of people to achieve their ideals, and that in fact what was unique about Europeans is that they recognized that these were morally appalling practices and ended up abolishing them at great cost to themselves, right? That's one way of teaching it that would jive with the actual historical record. The way it's taught a lot now is basically the US is uniquely evil. The West is uniquely evil. I think I've talked to other people about this. It's this kind of paradoxical Western exceptionalism in which the West is exceptional because it's pure evil, as if other peoples haven't conquered each other, as if when you looked at like the United States, well, let's not call it the United States, North America before the Europeans got here, as if it were this land of peace and prosperity and no ownership and hippie love, kind of like quasi-indigenous people, hippie love. It's baffling to me. And it is like, when I talk to even normal liberals, I mean, that is Democratic voters who are not intellectuals, they are appalled by this kind of teaching and by what frankly is, and I will say this, and we'll get more controversial every couple of minutes, I guess, what is frankly anti-white racism. It's frankly anti-white, anti-male sentiments. And I know people who have white sons, right, white kids, male, who happen to be male, they're appalled by this, right? And yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, again, like, are there things to criticize in our history? Of course. Have white men done bad things? Yeah, so has everybody. Let's have an open talk about this. Let's debate it. Let's not call each other racist. Let's not promulgate anti-white racism. And I think let's be proud of our real accomplishments here.
Yeah, indeed.
It's spectacular.
It makes me, I'm pretty sure this is a foreign mind virus injected into the system decades ago that has now just propagated itself throughout our institutions. It is a self-destructive path. Right?
It is. Yeah.
If this was something occurring in nature and we fast forward it, you would see that this little ecosystem would die. The ecosystem will die if you go down the path and follow the internal logic of the system that people are trying to inject. It will die, which is why when people raise the alarm on Western civilization being at risk, they're not being hyperbolic.
I know, and I hate that. I hate it that they're not, because then I pride myself on being like a rational moderate, but I'm very alarmed about these things. And when I say no, this really is just anti-white racism. A lot of this is. It's explicitly anti-white racism. People say you're being histrionic and hyperbolic just like the other side. And it's like, but no.
But no.
Like
it's
Kendi
in the literature.
Argues, right? I mean, Kendi explicitly argues that discrimination today against whites is justified as a way of rectifying this evil past. And if you think about, like, just take the smallest one that everybody seems to accept, but is absolutely baffling to me. It's just like affirmative action is just anti-white racism. Like, quite literally, that is what it is. And if you think that it's a justified policy, okay, we can have a debate about that, but let's be honest about what it's doing. It is actively discriminating against white people. That is what it's doing, period. Also, I mean, this spreads out into culture in so many ways, and it creates, I mean, it's not surprising, right, that white men are fleeing to the Republican Party. I mean, you can look, each election you just get like a little bit more going to the Republican Party, and it's not surprising because if you're in the Democratic Party now, like, let's say Pete Buttigieg tries to run in 2024, let's say Biden, something happens to Biden, who knows what, he will have to answer this question over and over again. Well, why should a white male run? Why are you, as somebody who says you love diversity and preach the gospel of diversity, why are you as a white male running? It's like he'll have to apologize for being a white male and consistently answer that question, for which, frankly, there isn't a good answer from the viewpoint that he promulgates himself, right?
No, his answer to that is that he engages in homosexual behavior. That makes him qualified.
I guess his answer would that's his sexual diversity, right? That right. he somehow contributes to. And
the absurdity of that is something that we need to just give a pregnant pause on. How absurd is it that a presidential candidate legitimately is going to say that the reason why it's okay for me to run for president is because I engage in homosexual practices.
That is this diversity that, yes. And again, like, I am very pro-gay rights, pro-gay marriage myself. Okay. But yes, like, how does that in any way qualify? I mean, to me, sexuality is irrelevant. I don't care. I don't care at all what the potential presidential candidate does sexually. Now, do I care about norms of monogamy, as we were talking about? Yeah. So let me even qualify that statement. I don't care what the president does if he's a monogamous person in a monogamous relationship, right? No, I do care about, I used to not care about what Bill Clinton did, let's say. Now I think I do, because I think it sets a bad example. I think it's good to be judicious and prudent as an elite male when you could otherwise engage in a lot of sexual behavior. But my point is, if you're monogamous, I don't care. But it doesn't qualify you. It's not a unique qualification.
It's not a qualifier. Exactly.
Neither is being a woman. Neither is being an African American. Neither is being a white, by the way. It shouldn't matter. But
you're a white.
People make it matter.
Yeah, go for it. And then I want to come back to this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one thing that, one thing that I really care about all of this and this pernicious ideology is that it makes thinking scientifically about humans, which is what I like to do, philosophically, scientifically, impossible, because you can't talk about obvious things such as differences among human populations. It's treated as ipso facto racist, and you are chastised. And so these just obvious things that we should be able to talk about. And as you know, we talked about before, and maybe we'll get into this, like, people who have the courage to do so, such as Charles Murray or Stephen Saylor, are ridiculed, assailed endlessly, and cast out of polite society. That's what is so, like, I find so appalling about this, because I'm about free speech, free debate, free disciplined debate, I will say, because there are complications there. But anyway, and this is really encroaching on that.
It really is, but I think it all goes back to where is this discussion going to lead? And it's these people taking the leap of talking about reality is going to lead to a political outcome that they don't like. And so they have to clamp
Yeah.
down on the discussion and therefore
Yes.
stymie a discussion and investigation. This is why the progressives are not the party of science, because they're unwilling to look at actual science.
Absolutely. Look, like, let's take just one example because this drives me crazy. I actually read this book by Lee McIntyre. It was called How to Talk to a Science Denier. And now he tried to be pretty congenial in it, but it was clear that he had this incredible bias. So he doesn't even talk about all of these obvious forms of science denialism that progressives not only that they engage in, but that they applaud and espouse. So systemic racism, we can't even talk about the actual like empirical claims. It's just this religious dogma that you have to accept and capitulate to.